Everybody, and welcome back on Lit Up with Annie. We have been doing psychoanalysis, psychoanalytic criticism in the course Literary Theory, and this is the second part for it. Uh, I'm going to quickly tell you what we did in the last session, a quick revision. And if you've not yet watched the first session, please go and watch that and then come to this session. We started with the introduction to psychoanalytic criticism. We talked about Oedipus complex, the desires in the texts, and we talked about the hidden meaning, the exploration of the hidden meaning in the texts. Then we talked about Sigmund Freud in this in the last session, and how he's called the father of this father of psychoanalytic school of criticism. Then we talked about the structures of human psyche, id, ego, and superego. We went into detail in that. We talked about how, for Freud, he talks about the two basic principles, that are the pleasure principle and the reality principle, then some other terms like libido. And we went into detail of Oedipus complex. Then we talked about the interpretation of dreams. I asked you in the last session that tell me which is the book that Freud has written on dreams. It was an interpretation of dreams, and he talks about dream work in that. Latent dream content, manifest dream content. And then he tells us that for the process, for the latent dream content to become manifest dream content, there are some processes, there are some stages that it goes through the dream: condensation, displacement, representation or representability, and secondary revision. We completed till here, Sigmund Freud. Today we are going to start with reader response criticism. Now, what is reader response criticism? The name suggests, reader ka response. How, when we read the text, हम उसका क्या मतलब निकालते हैं, हमारा एक्सपीरियंस क्या है टेक्स्ट का. हमने इसके बारे में we had talked about it earlier also, but in psychoanalytic criticism we go into more detail, as in, if we are producing a particular meaning of a particular text, then what is the reason behind that? What is our psyche behind that? In the first slide, I talked about the hidden desires in the text. that मैंने आपको कहा था कि हम सब अलग अलग वर्क्स पसंद करते हैं ना. कई लोग एक पर्टिकुलर जॉनर पसंद करते हैं, कई दूसरा. तो उसके पीछे रीज़न क्या है? कई बार क्या होता है, हम कोई मूवी देख रहे हैं तो हम अपने आप को इमेजिन लग जाते हैं करने उसमें. हम अपनी सिचुएशंस को उस मूवी की सिचुएशंस के साथ वी ट्राई टू मैच इट, बट वी डोंट से एनीथिंग अबाउट इट. व्हाई? बिकॉज देयर आर सर्टन थिंग्स दैट आर टैबू इन द सोसाइटी, बट वी enjoy reading a particular work and we enjoy watching a particular movie because somehow our unfulfilled desires are being fulfilled through those texts. So meaning of the text lie in the reader's experience of the text. Readers import into their reading their personal experiences. Now, when we talked about post-structuralism, we saw this particular thing, that how readers' role became very important to the post-structuralists. So readers जो हैं वो import करते हैं अपने personal experiences उस reading में. हम connect करने लग जाते हैं. Very important name, Norman Holland. He wrote the work The Dynamics of Literary Response, 1968. He said that readers use literary texts to fulfill their fantasies. जो अभी हमने बात की कि रीडर्स जो हैं वो क्या करते हैं, कोई नॉवल, कोई भी लिटरेरी टेक्स्ट को यूज़ करते हैं अपने अनफुलफिल्ड फैंटसीज को फुलफिल करने के लिए. द रीडर मेक कनेक्शन विद ऑल द पार्ट्स ऑफ द टेक्स्ट. These connections are related to the reader's secret fears and desires. Then there was another text, Reading and Identity, 1975. It was an essay. And very important, another text is Five Readers Reading. नाम से ही पता चलता है, देखो, Five Readers Reading का क्या मतलब है. 5 अलग अलग रीडर्स अगर रीड कर रहे हैं कोई एक टेक्स्ट, तो obviously the meaning generated will also be different. So every reader has a core identity that generates a particular kind of reading when it interacts with the text. If we are 5 readers and we interact with the same text, we are likely to produce some different meaning. when we interact with the text, right? We have two another very important names. One is Wolfgang Iser, the other is Stanley Fish. I hope you're making your notes. Wolfgang Iser का एक बहुत important concept है, which is creative process. The literary text activates our own faculties, enabling us to recreate the world it represents. This is what Iser terms as creative process. Iser thus locates the meaning in the interaction between the text and the reader's imaginative, that is, creative faculties. What is creative process basically? अगर मैं आपको कोई कहानी सुनाऊं, कोई भी कहानी, जैसे मैं कहूँ कि एक बहुत there was a huge mountain. On that mountain there was a very pretty hut. In that hut lived an old lady. That old lady lived with her beautiful daughter, and there was no other hut in the surrounding area. The surrounding area was full, it was a full forest. मैंने ये आपको कहानी सुनाई. I'm sure you guys imagined it, right? आपने एक माउंटेन इमेजिन किया, एक हट इमेजिन किया, ओल्ड लेडी, उसकी ब्यूटीफुल डॉटर इमेजिन की होगी. आई होप आपने की होगी. दैट इज़ क्रिएटिव प्रोसेस. द लिटरेरी टेक्स्ट, दिस वॉज अ लिटरेरी टेक्स्ट दैट आई गेव यू. It activated your faculties, and it enabled you to recreate the world inside your head. And this is what Iser terms as creative process. So Iser meaning generate करने की ही बात कर रहा है. So Iser locates the meaning in the interaction between the text and reader's imaginative faculties. यहाँ पे वो meaning को ढूंढ रहे हैं कि जब एक इंसान एक वर्क को पढ़ रहा है, एक टेक्स्ट को पढ़ रहा है, उसको इमेजिन कर रहा है, बस वो इंटरेक्शन जो है उसके बीच में जो मीनिंग प्रोड्यूस हो रहा है, दैट्स क्रिएटिव प्रोसेस. देन स्टैनली फिश गिव्स अस अ टर्म इंटरप्रेटिव कम्युनिटीज. अब यहाँ थोड़ा सा अलग हम लोग साइको एनालिसिस में स्टैनली फिश से अ लिटिल बिट डिफरेंट अप्रोच वी कम अक्रॉस. It is not only the individual's mind or psyche that generates meaning of the text. Meanings are generated through a consensus among a group of readers called interpretive communities. Very interesting. Stanley Fish says that अभी तक हम बात कर रहे थे that okay, they were readers ने text पढ़ा, meaning generate किया. Stanley Fish कहते हैं it is not only the individual's mind that generates meaning. For example, the same story that I just told you. Mountain, hut, old lady, beautiful daughter. अगर हम 10 लोग ले लें और हम उनसे पूछें, मुझे बताओ आपने ओल्ड लेडी को कैसे इमेजिन किया? Maybe I'll just take a hint, hunch, that you guys probably imagined the old lady with a little bent back, open hair, grey, right? You probably imagined green forest, and if you imagined the daughter, then a very slim and pretty girl. Where does that come from? Why did everyone imagine something similar? Not exactly same, but similar. That's because of your society around you. You probably have seen it in the movies, whenever you have, or your old storybooks, that there's an old lady with open grey hair. And that's what Stanley Fish is saying, He says that meanings are not only generated through an individual's mind, but through a consensus among a group of readers. And उस consensus of a group of readers को उन्होंने कहा है interpretive communities. पूरा community है जो interpret कर रहा है. So Fish is interested in knowing about what happens when a text is opened and consumed by the reader, or what the text does to the reader. So that's what Fish is interested in. So when a reader is opening a text, consuming a text, reading a text, then what exactly is happening? What is he imagining? What is happening basically? Interpretive communities is the term. Next, I'm sure you've all heard archetypes. C.G. Jung, archetypes and collective unconscious. Now, we just saw interpretive communities. वहीं से मिलता जुलती चीज़ है collective unconscious. So Jung is a very famous and a very important theorist that you have to read. He rejected Freudian theories, especially libido. Now, what was libido? Sexuality is the primary drive according to Freud, and this is what he terms as libido. So Freud ने कहा जो sexual energy है इन लोगों के अंदर वो primary drive है और उसको उन्होंने libido बोला. But Jung rejected that. He did not reject the term libido, but the definition of libido. So he rejected Freudian theories of libido as restricted to sexual, and said that libido was energy that could be channelized into any field. What is the difference? Freud only emphasized upon the sexual energy. Jung said that no, that is a very limited approach to libido. Libido is any kind of an energy that human beings have. And even if it is sexual energy, it can be channelized into any other field. Secondly, he departed from Freud and gave his ideas of archetypes. Again, Freud has not talked about a group of people. He has only talked about individual mind. Jung, यहाँ पे दूसरी चीज़ जो फ्रॉइड से अलग है, he gave his ideas of archetypes. Freud says the dreams as proceeding from unconscious. Jung said that self was also influenced by social norms. फ्रॉइड ने क्या कहा कि जो ड्रीम्स हमें आते हैं वो हमारी अनकॉन्शियस माइंड की जो भी उसमें है, it is a representation of that. But Jung said that individuals are also influenced by the society, by the norms, the traditions, the cultures, the rules that are there in our society. We are also influenced by that. So Jung suggested that human imagination draws upon images and ideas from myths and legends that occur across cultures and time spans. अब वही बात होगी ना कि अगर आपने एक ओल्ड लेडी इमेजिन की विद ग्रे हेयर, बेंट बैक, मे बी विद अ स्टिक ऑल्सो, where did you draw upon that image? Because you have heard it, you have seen it somewhere. You drew it from the idea. The idea came from the myths and legends that occurs across cultures and time spans, right? तो यूं की बात सच हो गई. These images is what he terms as archetypes. यही है archetypes. कोई बड़ा मुश्किल term नहीं है. Archetypes is a very simple and a very interesting concept. And archetypes, and they emerge from collective unconscious. What is collective unconscious? Common to all mankind. हम सबके दिमाग में. अच्छा, मैं एक और क्वेश्चन अगर आपको पूछती हूँ. आई विश दिस वॉज अ लाइव सेशन. टेल मी, अगर एक विलन है तो विलन, आप मुझे विलन के कैरेक्टरिस्टिक्स डिफाइन करो. टेल मी हाउ अ विलन शुड बी और हाउ अ हीरो शुड बी. If you'll talk about a hero, you will say a hero will probably be tall, handsome, maybe a little dark, and nowadays maybe with a beard, with a nice hairstyle, and somebody who will fight and win, of course, है ना. तो ये क्या है? ये एक आर्केटाइप है हीरो का, हमारे दिमाग में फिक्स्ड है. Similarly for a villain, similarly for a father figure, a mother, nourishing, caring, खाना बनाने वाली, वो कुछ गलत आर्केटाइप्स भी दिमाग में है, बट ये आर्केटाइप्स हैं. ठीक है. तो यूंग ने आर्केटाइप्स के बारे में बात की है. एंड फ्रॉम वेयर डू दे इमर्ज? दे इमर्ज फ्रॉम कलेक्टिव अनकॉन्शियस. Now Northrop Frye, another very very important name for you. We've seen questions from Northrop Frye a lot. Northrop Frye developed Jungian theories to study literary texts. चलो ये तो एक थ्योरी हो गई, फिलॉसफी हो गई. नॉर्थरॉप फ्राई ने इसी कॉन्सेप्ट को डेवलप किया टू स्टडी लिटरेरी टेक्स्ट्स. And it was called archetypal criticism. And it was not just Northrop Frye, but another very important name, Maud Bodkin. Yeah, Bodkin. So Bodkin wrote a work, Archetypal Patterns in Poetry. Please note, 1934. So she was talking about poetry. And later the works of Northrop Frye developed Jungian psychoanalysis in literary studies. बॉडकिन ने आइडेंटिफाई किया बहुत सारे आर्किटाइप्स को, जैसे कि हेवन. अगेन हेवन कैसा है? वाइट, ऑल वाइट, परियां हैं वहाँ पे, सब बहुत अच्छा है, लेक्स, फ्लावर्स, ब्यूटीफुल. हेल, सब कुछ जल रहा है वहाँ पे, सब कोई लोग जो है वो कढ़ाई में तले जा रहे हैं. तो ये सब आर्किटाइप्स हैं दिमाग में. बॉडकिन हैड आइडेंटिफाइड दीज आर्किटाइप्स, heaven, hell, Oedipal, rebirth, father figures, the hero as literary archetypes. And Northrop Frye, a very important concept, he drew upon transcendental genres like romance, and he associated it with summer, then tragedy with autumn, irony with winter, and comedy with spring. And he in which work? Anatomy of Criticism. ये क्वेश्चन हर बार ही आ जाता है. इसको याद रखना है आपने. सी, रोमांस इज ऑल ब्राइट, राइट, सनी, देयरफॉर समर. ट्रेजेडी इज आंसू बहते हैं ट्रेजेडी में, पतझड़ होती है, सो ऑटम. आयरनी और सटायर, अब कोई आपको ताने मार रहा है, इट इज़ वेरी कोल्ड हार्टेड, राइट, सो विंटर. एंड कॉमेडी, laughter, spring, जहाँ पे all flowers are blooming. So remember it like that. Now they were different from different fields. People have talked about psychoanalysis, like feminist psychoanalysis is there. So there were some feminists who have talked about different issues, which we include in psychoanalysis only. Now focused upon the issues of, now to feminists थे, some feminists, they focused upon the issues of identity, sexuality, structure of family and mother-daughter relationship. अब आप notice करो कि psychoanalysis में there is no mother-daughter relationship. Everybody has talked about the male figure, especially Freud. And therefore mother-daughter relationship was also put into question. In contrast to the classical psychoanalysis where the focus is upon father-son relationship. So there's a very important theorist, Nancy Kudrow. She wrote the work Reproduction and Mothering, 1978. And she was one of the first ones to talk about mother-daughter relationship. She says that, and even if you think about it, mother-daughter का relationship कैसा होता है और mothers क्या करती हैं अपनी बेटियों के साथ. See, a mother always sees the daughter as her double. मतलब ये तो मेरी जैसी है, इसका लाइफ भी मेरी जैसा होगा, सोसाइटी के नॉर्म, सोसाइटी के रूल्स भी, all the rules will apply to the daughter because of her gender, है ना. Daughters therefore they find it very difficult to make their own identity. It's very difficult for them from a young age. Why? Because the mother keeps telling the daughter that you're just like me. And her identity is developed through the mother. So therefore she finds it very difficult to make her own identity. The core identity of woman, Kudrow identifies as narcissism, lack of self-control, weak ego boundaries because of all of this. Because of the inability to discover autonomy from the mothers. Because they're not able to move away from the mothers and find their own identities. So the daughter turns to the father. Because the father represents the outside world. Because obviously, चाहे लड़का है चाहे लड़की है, will always, a child is born free. वो तो tame कर दिया जाता है. So the daughter then turns to the father who represents the outside world. You can read into detail in this mother-daughter relationship, Nancy Kodorow. Very interesting. That was feminist psychoanalysis. Then there is structuralist psychoanalysis. Structuralist, those who focused upon language, and the major name is Jacques Lacan. Jacques Lacan was a structuralist psychoanalytic theorist. And with Jacques Lacan in 1930s, this is the return to Freud. क्योंकि बहुत सारे लोग आए थे बीच में who turned away from Freud and their theories were different, criticized Freud. Jacques Lacan advocated a return to Freud because he took up Freud's theories, developed them in his own way. Language पे बात किया इन्होंने. So Lacan's psychoanalysis is a combination of Freudian theories with the linguistics of Saussure and Benveniste. Lacan's work, very important, Eckrich, 1977, and The Four Fundamental Concepts of Psychoanalysis, 1977. Very influential works. Lacan, language and the unconscious. Now, what has he talked about? Like Freud, Lacan begins with childhood and gives a model of identity formation. कैसे आइडेंटिटी फॉर्म होती है. अगर हम साइकोलॉजी में, अगर आपने पढ़ी है साइकोलॉजी तो आपने पढ़ा होगा, फ्रॉइड हैज़ ऑल्सो गिवन a model, stages, different stages of a child's, growing up, like oral stage, anal stage, and so on and so forth. Lacan also begins with childhood and he gives a model. कैसे identity form होती है? 3 stages, या फिर orders as Lacan calls them. The first one is imaginary. Child makes his first identification with the reflection in the mirror. इसको mirror stage कहते हैं basically. It sees and associates coordinated limbs and movements in the mirror and thus forms a sense of self. उससे पहले बच्चे को पता नहीं होता कि मैं एक अलग ह्यूमन बीइंग हूँ. बच्चा को लगता है कि मैं और मेरी मदर आर सेम. Then comes this mirror stage when, sometimes it's also said that this mirror stage is also like a reflection in the mother's eye. But ultimately, the child understands that, okay, starts developing this sense of self. वो हाथ पैर हिलाता है, ऐसे मिरर को टच करने की कोशिश करता है बच्चा. The child does not see a distinction between himself and the mother. And in the same manner, it does not see any distinction between himself or the reflection. उसको पता नहीं है कि reflection है कि क्या है. Just starting to develop a sense of the self. This mirror stage is a homologue for the mother's or the mother-child symbolic relationship. As I said, it's also a symbolic kind of a stage. But second is actually symbolic stage. Now, this is a very important stage in which Lacan is interested also, and other theorists also. Because this is the stage when the child acquires language. A movement when the child enters social relations. अब जो बच्चा है उसको पता है this is mother, this is father, and I am different human being because he has entered language. He knows now कि इसको ममा कहते हैं, इसको पापा कहते हैं, मैं बच्चा हूँ. And this is when the child enters social relations, enters language. In language, the child discovers that there are different names in the society. Father, mother, child. She is mother in language and she is different from I. मैं अलग हूँ. उसको I का concept अब समझ में आने लगता है धीरे धीरे. The child discovers endless chains of signifiers. This is the first sign of difference. The child discovers that he is different from others and he cannot desire the mother. बाकी सब तो पता चल जाता है कि ये मदर है, मैं अलग हूँ, I am somebody in the society. But this is also the point when the child understands, okay, I cannot desire the mother. It's taboo in the society. There is the name father, even when the father is not present. What does that mean? आपने सुना होगा मदर्स को बोलते हुए, आने दो पापा को बताती हूँ, पढ़ने बैठ जाओ पापा आ जाएंगे. इट्स नॉट कंपल्सरी कि सबके घरों में हुआ हो, बट आपने सुना ज़रूर होगा. दैट इज़ द कॉन्सेप्ट ऑफ एन एब्सेंट प्रेजेंट फादर. Father is not there at home, but he's still there because his threat is there. I will tell your father. An absent father acquiring a threatening presence. And the third one is real. This is the order that both imaginary and the symbolic try to control. दोनों जो ऊपर के दो stages हैं वो real जो है उसको control करने की कोशिश करते हैं. This is where illusion of the child from imaginary is at odd with the sense of otherness from the symbolic. So these are the three stages or orders that Lacan talks about. And finally, we come to the most important one, that is post-structuralist psychoanalysis. So we saw feminist psychoanalysis, structuralist psychoanalysis, and now this is post-structuralist psychoanalysis. And the big name is Harold Bloom. Again, Freudian revisionism. Works like Agon, 1983, A Map of Misreading, 1975, and Anxiety of Influence, the most important, 1984. Anxiety of Influence. ब्लूम का कॉन्सेप्ट है कि जितने भी पोएट्स हैं ना, एंग्जाइटी ऑफ इन्फ्लुएंस, देखो जितने भी नए पोएट्स आते हैं, व्हेन दे स्टार्ट देयर करियर, दे स्टार्टेड विद एंग्जाइटी. इट्स ट्रू फॉर everything actually. Whenever you start your career anywhere, you are full of anxiety. किस चीज़ की anxiety होती है? ब्लूम कहते हैं it's a father threat. जैसे अभी हमने देखा absent father threatening presence. What does father symbolize here? Father symbolizes the older poets. जो already poets जिन्होंने अपने नाम establish किए हुए हैं एक field में, they symbolize the father. And the new poets think that they have already done their part. We are new, what will we do new? So this is the threat that is there when they enter a field. So that's the unconscious threat of the father poet. And it says that probably this, this father threat begins from the childhood. जब वो absent father का threat रहता है, तो वो lifetime किसी ना किसी way में आता ही रहता है life में. Misreading is thus a psychic defense against the father. हम लोग क्या करते हैं अपने को बचाने के लिए? डिफेंस मैकेनिज्म्स यूज़ करते हैं. जैसे कि सबसे जो लो स्टैंडर्ड का डिफेंस मैकेनिज्म है वो है डिनायल. डिनाई कर देना किसी चीज़ को. जैसे बहुत वी हैव अ वेरी कॉमन एग्जांपल. many a times mothers are in denial that their son will do anything wrong. If somebody will come and tell them that your son is doing this, the mothers will be in denial totally. No. My child cannot do this. Very low standard of defense mechanism. A very high standard of defense mechanism is humor. और बहुत कम लोग कर पाते हैं. किसी दुख को हंसी के पीछे छुपा देना, ह्यूमर में कर देना गोल. और भी बहुत सारे हैं, अभी हम डिटेल में नहीं जाएंगे उसके. बट मिसरीडिंग इज ऑल्सो अ साइकिक डिफेंस अगेंस्ट द फादर. अब मिसरीडिंग क्या है? अच्छा, ये चीज़ किया था ओल्डर पोएट्स ने, बट इसमें कुछ गड़बड़ है, तो मैं इसको अलग तरह से कुछ करता हूँ या करती हूँ. तो देर आर 6 रिविजनरी मोड्स थ्रू विच द फादर पोएट इज सबस्यूम्ड एंड नेगोशिएटेड. 6 तरीके हैं. फर्स्ट इज क्लिनमन. It's like an irony which is used by the younger poet to show that the father poet was accurate up to a point but then went wrong. एक पॉइंट तक तो ठीक था, बट इसके बाद वो कुछ गड़बड़ कर दी उन्होंने. तो अब मैं आया हूँ, अब मैं आई हूँ या आया हूँ, वो मैं कुछ अब करूँगा. क्लिनमन. सेकेंड इज टेसेरा. कंप्लीशन भी कहते हैं. अब कंप्लीशन मतलब यंगर पोएट्स कहते हैं दैट द प्रीकर्सर पोएट did not go far enough, stopped somewhere, and I can take it further and I can complete the work. So younger poet will extend the precursor poem, showing that the older poet did not go far enough. So completion, you have to remember this, and your homework is to tell me which literary device is associated with these modes. Clinamen, tessera. Third is kenosis. Kenosis is a break. acknowledges the influence of the precursor but decides that he cannot repeat. अब जो यंगर पोएट है वो बोलेगा हाँ पुराने पोएट ने बहुत अच्छा काम किया है पर मैं इसको रिपीट नहीं कर सकती, तो फिर वो क्या करेगी? टेक्स अ ब्रेक अवे फ्रॉम द ओल्डर पोएट. आई हैव टू डू समथिंग डिफरेंट, सो ब्रेक्स अवे फ्रॉम द older poet. Fourth is demonization. Younger poet suggests that there is a hidden power in the precursor poem. Acknowledge karta hai, younger poet suggest bhi karta that there is a hidden power, but I have seen that it belongs to me, it belongs to him. He then accepts the hidden power of the precursor poem and reduces the intensity or greatness of the earlier one. मतलब जैसे हम अगर हमारे लिए कोई पोम है जो बहुत डिफ़िकल्ट है, हम क्या करते हैं? पैराफ्रेज कर देते हैं. तो डेमोनाइजेशन समथिंग लाइक दैट. यंगर पोएट सजेस्ट दैट देयर इज अ हिडन पावर इन द प्रीकर्सर पोम विच बिलोंग्स टू हिम. ही एक्सेप्ट्स द हिडन पावर ऑफ द प्रीकर्सर पोम, एक्सेप्ट करता है बट उसको रिड्यूस, इंटेंसिटी को रिड्यूस कर देगा, ग्रेटनेस को रिड्यूस कर देगा, मे बी टू मेक इट ईजियर फॉर द पीपल, फॉर द ऑडियंस. Fifth is escases, when the younger poet curtails the poem's power and that of the precursor. अब डेमोनाइजेशन में उसने इंटेंसिटी तो रिड्यूस कर दी, अब यंगर पोएट क्या करेगा? काट देगा, कर्टेल कर देगा पोएम की पावर को और उसी के साथ साथ पोएट की पावर को भी. he or she will become the new normal, I can say. And the last one is apophthegms. It's also called the return of the dead. It's like a remix. पुराने गानों को अभी उठा के remix बनाया जाता है ना, for the audience to enjoy. The younger poet revisits and rewrites the older poem in such an effective way that when we read the older poem, we imagine it to be written by the younger poet. There are so many remix songs which you probably would not know that the original one was somebody else's. जैसे मैं एग्जाम्पल देती हूँ, मैं तेनू समझावा की. You must have heard the song. I will not call it that other kind of a remix, but it's not an original by Arijit. It was an older song by a Punjabi singer. Similarly, so many other songs like have you heard that song ये मेरा दीवानापन है? अब उसका एक जो ओरिजिनल है वो सुनना उसको कभी. You will understand what I'm trying to say. So the new musician has taken the older song and changed it in such a way that you cannot even imagine कि older वाला इतना simple था. It did not have that seductive quality that the newer song has. तो बहुत सारे एग्जाम्पल्स आपको आपकी डे टू डे लाइफ में मिल जाएंगे इन सभी के. These are the 6 revisionary modes. First, Klinerman. Second, tessera, completion. Third is kenosis, breakaway. Fourth is demonization, hidden power. Fifth is escases, curtailing the power, poet and the poem. And sixth is apophthegms, remix, return of the dead. Last point in this psychoanalytic criticism is schizoanalysis. Deleuze and Guattari दोबारा आ गए हैं ये, हमने इनको पोस्ट स्ट्रक्चरलिज्म में भी देखा था. They wrote this work Anti-Oedipus 1983. Begin by looking at the structure of desire. Anti-Oedipus नाम से पता चल रहा है आपको. Then in 1980s and 90s, they produced some works by combining psychoanalysis and post-structuralism, and they developed something called schizoanalysis. Schizoanalysis is psychoanalysis and post-structuralism को combine करके they gave this term schizoanalysis. All right. So this is the end of psychoanalysis. जब हम फर्दर ऑन करेंगे तो मैं आपको टर्म वाइज भी दोबारा से इसको करवाऊंगी, बट फॉर नाउ दिस इज़ इट. आई वॉन्ट यू टू डू योर रीडिंग, एक्स्ट्रा रीडिंग फ्रॉम द बुक्स एंड फ्रॉम वेयर एवर you can and complete doing this. You can watch the session again, if this is your first time and कुछ नहीं समझ आया हो तो बता देना. So if you liked the session, please share it with your friends and please subscribe to the channel. Thank you. I will see you in the next session.